Welcome to the Women in Tech Stories podcast, where we celebrate and showcase the everyday women working in tech. We hope to demystify some of the industry and encourage others to consider a role in this sector. My name is Jane Abbott. I'm MD at PCR Digital. We help companies hire tech and digital skills from diverse networks.
Today, I have the pleasure of chatting to Rosa Fox. Rosa is a senior back-end developer who has over 10 years professional experience in technical roles. They're from testing, technical writing, project management, through to development roles as a Ruby developer. Within her roles, she's been a tech lead, a line manager, an advocate for diversity in tech, and a mentor, as well as a number of other things. Welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's lovely for you to be here, Rosa, and thanks for taking part in the Women in Tech Stories podcast. Rosa, before you tell me about your role that you're doing today, I want to wind back the clock and understand a bit more about your background, your upbringing in school, to understand if this has shaped your journey into tech. So can you tell me a little bit about what your childhood was like?
So my childhood, I grew up in Milton Keynes, which is about an hour north of London. And growing up, I was kind of more into creative subjects. So when I was little, I did like dancing, and I started playing guitar when I was 7 years old. And yeah, I just really, really loved like dance, music, all things creative.
Ah,
At school, I suppose I did have a bit of an introduction to technology, though it wasn't so much coding. But we did have a school website, and the website was online, and
yeah,
we kind of had like a newspaper as part of that. So I used to write articles for that, and I remember making some sort of like guinea pig themed website. But it didn't involve any coding. It was
yeah,
kind of more of a like, I suppose, uh, I'm trying to think what you call it, like if you've used WordPress or
yeah,
Shopify or one of those websites that are kind of like a website builder, so you can sort of type things in, but you're not actually having to do any coding. It was more that kind of thing.
right.
Um, so I had a bit of an introduction to technology then in middle school, but
Yeah.
as a teenager in high school, I didn't really do any coding. I was more interested in my band practice and things like that. So
Oh, so really into the music and the creative stuff. Excellent. And what sort of school was it? Was it a posh school? Was it a state school?
it was the regular free school.
Yeah, yeah.
So I went to just the regular school, but I was quite lucky in that because I didn't come from a well-off family or a posh background.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I grew up in Milton Keynes, and because it was like a new city, so Milton Keynes is only, I might get this wrong, I think it's over 50 years old, around that kind of age. So it's
Oh,
quite new. So the school had just been built that was close to my house. So it was kind of this brand new school with lots of good facilities. And it had
mm,
lots of computers. It had like a recording studio. So I was quite lucky that although it was like not exactly a posh area, not
yeah.
exactly, it was a free school, but it was quite like a good school, I suppose. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was quite lucky in that.
Oh,
But
excellent. And were you good at, you said you liked the creative stuff, so you liked the music and the creative things. Were you good at all things, or what were you good at school?
I was fairly good at like most subjects, but I was never like a straight A student. I was probably more like in the middle, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
And my best subjects were probably most things apart from maths was actually maths and art were my worst subjects, which is quite surprising now that I'm a developer. So, um,
Really?
yeah, I mean, I think I got like C's in them at GCSE, so I still was okay. But
Yeah.
yeah, I found it really, really difficult. I think maybe a problem with maths for me was that when I was in school, I was kind of on a table with lots of my friends, and they used to have the answers in the back of the textbook, so you could
Okay.
kind of like not just mess around the whole lesson and then just before lunch
Yeah,
write the
yeah.
answer back of the book. I don't know if they would still do that anymore printing the answers in the back of the book, maybe.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think because of that, I didn't really think of maths as something I took that seriously or really even an option for me. So
interesting.
yeah, and I did find it difficult, but yeah, I've still managed to be a developer, so it worked out
Well
okay.
done. Yeah. And did you have any inkling of what you wanted to do when you were at school? Did you have dream of a profession or a certain job?
Yeah, so when I was younger, like a lot smaller, I wanted to be an author because I really love writing. And then as time went on, I wanted to do something with music. And I really wanted to work in music technology because I used to have like band practice in the studio and I used to enjoy recording our band and then kind of like using software to edit the
Yeah.
songs. So I really wanted to do music technology. And that's actually kind of how I discovered programming because when I went to uni, my course was half music and half computer science. Um, and computer science is kind of the subject that you study at uni if you want to like do coding.
Yeah.
One of the subjects you can study. And yeah, I didn't really know what it was, but it was kind of like the last option on my form. I think I don't know if it's still UCAS form, but back then it was kind of
Yeah.
UCAS form, which was like all the uni options you could pick. And then, yeah, I just needed to fill up a space. So I put this course down that was half music, half computer science. Uh,
Amazing.
I went to the open day and the tutor was writing code and generating loads of music. And I thought, wow, instead of just using software to maybe like edit music, I could create the software. And I thought that was really cool. And it wasn't anything I'd ever considered. I had barely even seen coding before, but it kind of opened up a whole new world for me because technology is just everywhere. So it's just amazing
Yeah.
to be able to make it.
And how fortunate that you went to a modern school, like a new school that had all the tech in the music room to just even introduce that you could edit your music using the tech. I mean, there'd be other schools that wouldn't even have that in. So that is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that introduction. And then you saying you wanted to be an author and then you got into the music side of things and using tech for that. But did you have anyone at home or at school kind of helping you and encouraging you on what route you should be taking?
So my parents, they're not like pushy parents, if you know what I mean. I think,
Yeah,
they kind of have the vibe as long as you're happy, then we're
yeah,
happy. So I was very lucky in that sense. And I think they were more just like, if you enjoy it, then that's what you should go for. So
yeah.
uh, I think they always encouraged, me to play guitar, and my dad was the one who taught me my first few nursery rhymes on my little tiny guitar from Argos.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
yeah, they were very encouraging. But in terms of technology, so my dad, he doesn't do coding, but he was quite into building computers because
yeah.
computers were really expensive. So he used to kind of build them himself to make it cheaper and then run
Right.
Linux, which is like a free operating system, so that we could have like me and my sister could have a computer
Oh,
that we
he
would,
sounds very clever.
yeah, that we would use to go on MSN Messenger and MySpace, and that was what we had
Yeah,
the day before TikTok and Instagram.
amazing.
So yeah, so I suppose I did have um, you know, parents that were interested in
Good influences, just
technology.
understanding it as well. Yeah,
Yeah, and they've always been quite keen to keep up with,
yeah.
using social
Oh,
media and yeah, things like that. But they weren't like developers or anything.
no,
Although,
and that's lovely as well because I think, I often see meet like my friend's parents are doctors and she's a doctor. It's like you just sometimes follow what your parents did. So it's great that your dad was kind of open to the tech and inquisitive enough to find out about it and how to use it. That's amazing. Good. Right, I'm going to find out now more about your sort of journey into the tech world. Talk me through how you got your first role in tech and how you got it and what you were doing.
my first role in tech was at a company called Happy Bear Software, And by
Which
rolling tech,
sounds lovely. Happy Hair
I
software.
by first role, that was my first developer role. But I
Yeah,
suppose actually before that, I had a role in tech, which was that I worked at a company. They did like online kind of management training,
yeah,
and I was a project support, which is kind of a junior version of a project manager. So the project manager is the person who kind of organizes everyone and makes sure that you deliver the project. And that was kind of like a tech company that I was within, because they built this like online uh, training software, so
yeah,
that we could kind of have coaches come in and then teach them how to be better managers. Um, so I there was this the chief technology officer and I think one developer that worked there on the kind of tech team, so it was very small.
hmm
But I always found it quite inspiring um, to see what they were working on and doing.
yeah.
Although I'd done some coding at uni, I just didn't think I was good enough to be a developer. I struggled quite a
Mm.
lot when with learning to code. As I mentioned before, I was not the best at maths. So when I got
Yeah,
to uni, most people had done maths A level and had been coding from a young age, whereas I'd never even heard of coding. So
yeah,
I always felt like I was a bit on the back foot, and it took me a while to understand how to kind of break down problems, and also just have the self-confidence and self-belief that I could do it. Because one thing with programming is that you need to be very you need to not give up, and it's not so much about knowing um like you don't need to already know how to do it, because the whole thing is like you're just learning how to get through each little step in order to complete the problem and write your code. um So it's kind of a case of not giving up on each step, and
yeah,
sometimes I get to
yeah,
the first step and I'd be like, "Oh my God, this is too hard. I can't do it." I completely freak out, and I just quit, and I felt so overwhelmed. I think being in a class where there were quite a lot of um, I guess boys or men, I don't know what you
yeah,
call
yeah.
it.
Males.
Young men. I would find that a bit intimidating as well, because I wouldn't want to be like, "Oh, she's the girl. She's stupid. She can't put
Mm.
legs down." Um, I did feel that a little bit at first, but then actually, I think a lot of that was in my head, and a lot of the people that I was surrounded by were actually really encouraging and kind and wanted to help me.
Yeah,
So yeah, so my first job, I worked with some developers, but I didn't think I was good enough to be one.
yeah,
Um, and then while I was working at that company, I made friends with someone who worked at like the company next door, and he was a games developer, so he coded video games,
yeah,
and he started teaching me some basic coding skills. So I was learning how to make websites using HTML and CSS,
yeah,
um, and these are some of the sort of, if you're interested in learning to code, some of the really good languages to start with. And yeah, we would go to the pub after work and like just go through some tutorials and things like that. And I really enjoyed it. And I started practicing on my lunch break at work. I'd use like just free online websites and just kind of copy
yeah,
copy them.
yeah,
And yeah, I really enjoyed it. And at that point, I became a bit more interested in like, could I be a developer? But it still
yeah.
felt like this is never going to happen, maybe. But at least I'm enjoying it. And as my parents always taught me, if you find something fun, then it's good to just go with it. It doesn't
There's your
necessarily,
parents again helping you.
it doesn't necessarily matter
Yeah,
on the final outcome. And that's when I started following a lot of people on Twitter, which I guess is now X.
yeah,
Um, at the time, it was because I guess it had just become really popular. This is probably in like 2012 or 13. And I would follow like a lot of people that worked in tech. And I realized that there were quite a lot of like tech events that happened. And one of them was a Women in Tech conference. I think it was Ladies Who Code. And
mm,
someone that I followed, she tweeted that she had a spare ticket for free. So I messaged her and she gave me the ticket, and went along, and it was really nice. I hung out with her like the whole day, and at the end there was a lightning talk, which is like a quick 5-minute talk that
Yeah.
someone does. And it was someone called Despo, and she was starting a meetup called Code Bar, which is like free coding workshops for people underrepresented in tech. Um, and they were happening in London like once a week. So I
Right.
lived in Brighton at the time, but I got the train like on, I think it was Wednesday night,
Yeah.
to London. And then it would kind of be in like a different tech company office each week, and you'd turn up. First half an hour they'd have like free food and drinks, and you could just chat to the people that were there. And then from like 7 till 9 p.m. you would kind of get put with a mentor, and they'd help you go through tutorials and just kind of help you learn coding skills. And it was all completely free. The
Oh,
people that
amazing.
mentored were all volunteers, and it was just like a nice community event. And that was the first time that I actually met people that worked in the industry, and they actually encouraged me to be a developer.
Mm,
I never really felt encouraged before. It always just felt like it was
yeah.
this faraway world that I just didn't know really anything about, and I thought you had to be like a super genius to be a developer. Um, and yeah, from meeting people there and sort of like slowly learning, it kind of helped me feel like, maybe there's some hope. And at one of the Code Bar workshops, I met the person who started Happy Bear Software, and he was looking for an apprentice for a few months. So I did that, and then I got kept on as a junior developer. So yeah, that's kind of
Amazing.
how I got my first job. So very much getting involved in the community and surrounded
Yeah.
with nice people.
Yeah. And the code bar still going? Is that what they do still?
Yeah, so Code Bar's still going strong. I actually used to help organise it, but I haven't helped organise for the last few years. But it's in loads of different cities now all across the world. And yeah, still going. I think it's been
Yeah.
11 years maybe.
Amazing. But you also enjoyed it. You know that there was something that you enjoyed, you were inquisitive about it. So um I can understand how you got there and how you got to where you are, but it sounds like that the enjoyment had to be there. It'd be terrible if you hated it and someone's going, no, this is what you got to do. So
Yeah, I think because with making the websites, it was, yeah, like a tangible
yeah.
outcome, like it's something that fun that you could use
Yeah.
afterwards. So I think I quite liked that. I liked it was a lot more creative than I necessarily would have thought when I first
Yeah.
started
Yeah.
coding. So
Really good. And so then that brings us to today and what you're doing. And what I want you to describe is the role you're doing today and how what you're doing kind of helps the team or the business, like how what you're doing for the business and how it helps the business. Because sometimes I think people think, they say they're a developer, but I don't understand, what that means in terms of the bigger picture. So tell me about what you're doing now and how you're helping the business.
yeah, so I work as a senior back-end developer. I work at a company called Boxed, and they basically sell like installations of boilers and green energy products like solar panels and heat pumps and various things like that. So there's kind of like the customer website, which is like, say if you wanted to, I don't know, buy a boiler, and then you can go on there, and then
Yeah.
you go through and you put your information in, you choose which day you want it to be installed, then it will find you the installer who's going to come and install it, um, take the payment, all that kind of thing. Then there's kind of like a mobile app, which is what the actual when I say engineers, I mean like the people that would install like the boilers, uh,
Yeah.
as opposed to a software engineer, because sometimes
Right.
it
Yeah.
seems
Yeah.
confusing. But there's like an app that they would have which would say like, oh, this job's become available. Do you accept it? Can
Yeah.
you can you do it? So there's that side. Then there's also like an admin section, so people that help kind of coordinate all of the installations from the admin team. Say if someone can't do it for some reason and they need to find someone else, or yeah, there's that. And then all of the equipment needs to get delivered to the person's house for the installation. So there's quite a lot of different, you know,
Yeah, moving
parts.
parts.
So, you know, you might not think boiler installation sounds exciting, but actually there's actually quite a lot of interesting parts to it. So my job is I'm a back-end developer. So the difference, so you might have heard the term front-end developer, and then there's also back-end developer. There's also like other kinds of developers like mobile developer and games developer, but usually when you're talking about developing for the web, usually you have front end and back end. So front end is like the things that the user can see on screen. So one analogy is like, say you were like performing a play, the front end developers would be like the people you see on the stage,
Yeah,
making it look really like cool and exciting. And then the back end developers, that's like the people backstage. So kind of making sure that the information is in the right state that it needs to be, so that the front end can display the information, or so
yeah,
that
yeah,
this can run the show.
yeah,
Uh, so yeah, so I basically um, yeah, make sure the data is going on the database in the right way, model data, present it on something called an API, which is basically something that the front end app will look at to get the information it needs.
yeah,
Uh, and then I do like planning out tasks as well. So maybe if we've got a project coming up, maybe the designer might design the different parts of the website, and then they'll probably do some research with the end users, or maybe
yeah,
the engineers or whoever might actually be using like the product we're making,
yeah,
and yeah, find out what they require, then kind of plan out like how might we actually build this, and then break this down into tasks. So this involves a lot of collaborating with people across different roles in the team, um, and yeah, there's kind of like, you know, the process from planning it all out to finally actually putting it online at the end. And I suppose the thing that it does for the company is make the website work so people can buy things. So yeah.
But honestly, it just creates it gives it a life, what you're doing. You know, you think of the back end and you think of the rows and rows of lines of code and things like that. But when you explain what it does, and it is quite complex, all those things to make all those things, like, I think we just take it for granted, don't we? We click on a button and ta-da! But it's like all of the back end stuff that enables that when we click the button. So really good job. Excellent. And what do you've mentioned some of the traits, I think, and skills, but what do you think are the things that make a good developer? And do you think you need certain exams and things? But I'm more interested in the traits and the skills.
I think, yeah, so one is your ego will try and get in the way quite a lot. You know, with programming, you'll get stuck all the time. Like I've been a developer for 11 years and I still get stuck most days. You know, it's just normal, because you're always having like new information and new things that you might not have seen before. You know, sometimes a task might be similar to loads that you've done before, so it's easier, and other times it's all completely new and you need to figure it out. So I think having the sort of tenacities, which means to like just not give up,
Yeah.
is really important. And I think ways to do that are, you know, take breaks, be kind to yourself, and also have like supportive people around you. Um,
Mm,
so I think, yeah, just knowing that it's okay to fail. You'll fail like a lot, but that's normal, and it's all part of the learning process.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, that I think being a good communicator, because you do have to work with lots of other people. I
Yeah.
think there's a sort of like image of developers, people that just like are in the basement and they don't really socialize and they're a bit cut off from the world.
Yeah.
um, Really, that's not the case at all. You have to do a lot of communication, collaboration. Also, as a creative, you need to be able to think of solutions and ideas, and you actually are building something that maybe like millions of people might be using.
Yeah.
So yeah, having like some creativity and also having like care and empathy because the things that you're making will be used by people that might impact how they live their life. So
Mhm.
want to make the experience as least stressful for them as possible, and think about like, yeah, what would be good for them and what wouldn't.
Yeah.
And then I think being able to like break problems down and into smaller chunks, yeah, is useful.
And did you
Patience.
learn that, Rosa? Because I think right at the beginning you said um, that you just give up quite quickly. Did you learn how to break the problems down and try this and then try that? Is it you can learn that? Do you feel?
Yeah, I think the thing I just learned is perseverance, and you just have to keep going until the bitter
Yeah,
end.
yeah, yeah,
Keep trying. So yeah, it's yeah, a case of not giving up. But there are things that you might hit something and be stuck on it, but the next time you'll know because you were stuck on it before. So it does get easier because
yes,
you get used
yeah,
to the blockers that you come up against, you recognize them and you know how to get through them easier. So
yeah. And I
yeah,
bet when you have solved a problem, you just feel great. I bet you're like, yeah, great day, solved that problem.
yeah, that is, the roller
Yeah.
coaster.
Yeah, ups and downs. Oh, and what are you most proud of in your career? The thing that's really stands out for you?
Probably, probably two things. I think one would be running Code Bar because I ran that for 7 years, and I started the Brighton chapter because I mentioned
Mm,
I was originally in London,
yes.
so because I lived in Brighton at the time, so it was easier for me to get to.
Yeah.
That was just really nice, but it was kind of like well, I'd never run an event before, so it's kind
No.
of something from scratch and getting lots of people involved and building a community. But it was so rewarding because a lot of people did go on to get jobs in tech, and it's still going strong now. There are people are still organizing it and doing a great job. So it's just something that makes me feel like really positive.
Yeah.
So that, and then I think the other thing would probably be maybe my old job when I was tech lead on some quite big projects that had like quite a wide reach. And yeah, considering how hard I found coding to start with, it's kind of
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I've actually
Yeah.
kept going and done some really like impactful things. So yeah,
Amazing. Amazing. And then last question for you. What advice would you give to your younger self? So if you were just starting out now, what would the advice be that would help you on the journey into working in tech?
I'd say don't be scared to ask for help because so often I would be scared to ask for help, and then more time goes on, and then the longer you leave it, it's kind of harder to ask. So
Yeah.
I'd say like one of the things about working in tech is that there is a lot of collaboration, and the way that technology can evolve quickly is by working together and helping each other out. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, definitely like don't be scared to ask for help. Um, I think having faith in yourself, because you can do it, and I think especially being a woman, and especially being a young woman, sometimes it might feel like you shouldn't be there, but like you absolutely should.
Yes.
Women, girls outperform boys in every subject in school. Girls are just as intelligent, if anything, maybe even more intelligent than boys. So
Yeah.
it's not like, it's not that. It's because we live in a world that has unfortunately made us feel otherwise because there's a lot of
Yeah.
imbalance in the world. And that's changing, and I think that's an amazing thing. I think there's a lot more young women going into tech now, and I think, so many women use tech, for, I mean, if you think of like social media, or like, I don't know, I'm trying to look at things around my room that will have tech in. I don't know, my speakers, or
And
like
our fitness, all the
now.
things we use. Yeah,
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 watch. So like all these cool things that we consume, um, not just as women, but as anyone. People need to think of those ideas and then build them. So there's just like kind of endless endless things that you can do. And it seems a shame that we should be cut our voices should be cut out from that. So
yeah.
I think, like, just you've got to go for it.
Definitely. Rosa, thank you so much for sharing your story. You are honestly inspirational. It's almost like the further you were away from doing it to becoming then a back-end developer as you've done, it's very inspirational. And just the things you say about having the confidence, the ego, the never giving up on all those things. I just think they're not things that people would think about if they're thinking, oh, I'm going to be a software engineer or a developer. They're not what they're thinking about. So I think how you've told the story and what you've done to get where you've done has been really inspirational. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much as well for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Women in Tech Stories. I encourage you to share this podcast amongst your peer group, friends, family, and colleagues. We want to encourage more females to work in this amazing industry, and by sharing these stories, we hope they will reach those at school, those returning to work after a break, or those wanting to change a career. If you'd like to share your story, please get in touch via the details attached to each episode. I look forward to hearing from you.